spots here just so you can punt the ball from a normal distance.
Manning on 3rd and 10. He fires, and the catch is made by Cruz, who breaks free. One man to beat. Victor Cruz down the sideline. Cruz is going to take it all the way, tying an NFL record. 99 yards from Manning to Cruz.
Victor Cruz wasn't supposed to become a star. He wasn't a first-round pick. He wasn't even a 5-star recruit. He never appeared on a rankings board or received a scholarship offer from a powerhouse program. And at multiple points in his life, football nearly slipped away from him entirely. Not because of a rival, not because of a better player taking his spot, but because life itself kept getting in the way. But somehow a kid from the streets of Paterson, New Jersey, a city where the odds were stacked against you before you even laced up your cleats, would rise from total obscurity to become one of the most electric players the NFL has ever seen. This is the story of how Victor Cruz went from undrafted long shot to New York Giants legend. Born on November 11th, 1986 in Paterson, New Jersey, Cruz grew up in one of the most historically overlooked cities in America. Paterson, once a thriving industrial hub, had fallen into decades of economic decline by the time Cruz was a child. Poverty, crime, and limited opportunity defined the landscape. But it also bred toughness, creativity, and an unshakable sense of community. His father was a firefighter who ran toward danger for a living. His mother was Puerto Rican, and she filled her home with music, warmth, and culture. Victor carried both identities with pride, blending his father's grit with his mother's vivacity in the way the football world would eventually fall in love with. But long before salsa dances and primetime touchdowns, Cruz was just another overlooked athlete trying to find his way. At Paterson Catholic High School, he became a local phenom, playing both wide receiver and defensive back. Cruz dominated the New Jersey football scene with a burst of speed and ball tracking ability that made coaches take notice, even if the big programs didn't. As a senior, he led hhis team to an undefeated 11-0 season and a state championship, scoring 19 total touchdowns while earning all-state honors. By any measure, those were the numbers of a Division I prospect. And yet, the phone barely rang. In the hyper-competitive world of college football recruiting, Cruz fell through the cracks. Too many wide receivers, not enough tape against elite competition, not the right connections, the machinery of college sports, the camps, the showcases, the relationship building between coaches and high school programs largely passed him by. So Cruz took the long road. After high school, he spent a postgraduate season at Bridgeton Academy in Maine, a prep school that has quietly served as a second chance for dozens of athletes over the years. As a personal side note, one of my best friends played at Bridgeton the year after Cruz attended, and he described it as pretty much freezing cold with nothing to do besides work out and play football. Away from home for the first time, Cruz channeled his focus into football and exploded for nearly 900 yards and 8 touchdowns in a single season. It was his first lesson in perseverance. When doors close, find another way in. And that pattern would follow him for years. At the University of Massachusetts, a program that rarely produces NFL stars, Cruz's football career nearly unraveled before it even truly began. He struggled academically. The transition from Paterson to prep school to a college campus, the independence, the pressures, it all proved overwhelming at first. He was sent home from the program not once, but twice. For many players, the first dismissal ends the dream. A second is almost a death sentence. But Cruz refused to let his story end there. He spent that time back in Paterson reconnecting with where he came from, the hunger, the grind, the understanding that no one was coming to hand you anything. He returned to UMass with a renewed sense of purpose, earned back his eligibility, and rededicated himself to the game. And slowly, then all at once, he developed into one of the best receivers in school history. Despite not earning a starting role until his junior year, already behind where most NFL prospects are at that point, Cruz closed his UMass career in the top 5 in program history in receiving yards, finishing with nearly 2,000 yards and 131 catches. He became a 2-time first-team All-CAA selection and fittingly graduated with a degree in Afro-American Studies, a nod to his cultural identity that had always anchored him and his family's. Still, when the 2010 draft arrived across 7 rounds, 255 picks, no team called his name, and Victor Cruz went undrafted. For most players, going undrafted means going home. The dream ends quietly, without ceremony, and life moves on. For Victor Cruz, it lit a fire. When the New York Giants first signed him the day after the draft, not out of coincidence, not out of need, but because he was worth a shot, he would have to earn everything from scratch, competing against players the league was already invested in, fighting for a roster spot against the longest of odds. Almost immediately, he made the football world pay attention. In a 2010 preseason game against the crosstown rival New York Jets, Cruz delivered with one of the most jaw-dropping preseason performances anyone could remember, with 6 catches, 145 yards, and 3 touchdowns in one game. This was also highlighted in an episode of Hard Knocks that offseason. And in one game, this complete unknown from a mid-major program had turned MetLife Stadium into his stage. Overnight, a receiver no one had drafted or even heard of became the talk of New York. He finished that preseason leading the entire NFL in receiving yards. He forced his way onto the Giants' 53-man roster through sheer undeniable production. But as his momentum was building, a hamstring injury struck and ended his rookie season almost before it began. And this was another setback for him, another moment where the dream could have quietly dissolved. After spending that offseason rehabbing and getting 100% back to full strength, the 2011 season happened. The Giants entered the season with Cruz listed 4th on the receiver depth chart, 4th between Hakeem Nicks, obviously Mario Manningham, and Dominic Hickson. And Cruz was essentially a depth piece, a player who might see the field on third downs if things went well for him. Nobody, not the fans, not the analysts, not even his coaches really expected him to become the heartbeat of a championship team, but then a breakout performance against the Eagles in Week 3 happened. The Eagles were coming off an offseason dubbed the Dream Team, one of the most hyped rosters in recent memory, flush with free agents, acquisitions, and media buzz. The Giants were supposed to be overmatched, but Victor Cruz had other ideas. He torched the Eagles secondary for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, running routes with precision and finishing plays with explosiveness that no one in the secondary was prepared for. The broadcast booth couldn't stop talking about him, and by the final whistle, Victor Cruz mania had officially arrived. Every week that followed, he became impossible to ignore. His ability to turn a short catch into a 40-yard gain, reading the blocks downfield, changing direction, making defenders miss in open field, felt instinctive. The swagger was real, but it never overshadowed the substance. And of course, there was the salsa dance. After every touchdown, Cruz would break into his fluid, joyful salsa in the end zone, hips moving, arms out, a grin that lit up the stadium. What many fans first saw as showmanship was, in truth, something deeply personal. Cruz danced salsa in honor of his late grandmother, Felicia, who had taught him as a child in their living rooms of Patterson. Every touchdown became a tribute. Every dance was a conversation with the woman that he had lost, carried out on the biggest stages in professional sports. Soon, the salsa dance wasn't just a Victor Cruz thing, it was an NFL thing. Kids copied it in backyards. Teammates mimicked it in practice. The entire league embraced it as a symbol of joy. Victor Cruz wasn't just producing highlights, he was building a cultural identity that transcended the sports. Then came the play that changed the Giants' 2011 season forever. Christmas Eve, 2011, Giants vs. Jets with their playoff lives on the line. Pinned at their own 1-yard line, 99 yards of football between them and a score, Eli Manning took the snap and found Cruz. What followed was one of these rare plays you don't watch, you feel. Cruz caught the ball, made 2 men miss, and then just simply ran 99 yards, the longest possible touchdown in professional football. MetLife Stadium shook. It was the kind of play that just doesn't happen in a script, the kind you stumble into and at the right moment. An undrafted receiver on a 1-yard line turning nothing into everything. The touchdown ignited the Giants' stretch run to the playoffs. It was also a pivotal play at a key point in the game that would dictate the future of both franchises. To take it a step further, if the Giants lost this game, they could have been sitting at 8-8, tied with the Eagles and the Cowboys. The Jets, on the other hand, had lost their second game in a row and would drop their season finale to miss the playoffs at 8-8. They would not win 8 wins again until 2015 and would not have a double-digit win season again. The Cruz 99-yard game is a haunting memory for the Jets fans, the real Jets fans, and it was truly the beginning of the end of Rex Ryan's time in New York. Victor Cruz finished the 2011 regular season with 1,536 receiving yards, a franchise record at that time, along with 9 touchdowns, a Pro Bowl invitation, a second-team All-Pro honors. He had gone from the bottom of a depth chart to the most productive receiver on one of the most NFL storied franchises, and the best was still yet to come. In the NFC Championship game against the San Francisco 49ers, with a Super Bowl berth on the line, Cruz delivered again. He had 10 catches on 17 targets for 142 receiving yards, big play after big play, helping quiet a hostile crowd and carry the Giants to their date with destiny. Personally, this is one of my all-time favorite Eli games. He got absolutely lit up and destroyed by the 49ers, but that's a story for another day. February 5th, 2012. Super Bowl, the Giants versus the New England Patriots, a Super Bowl rematch of the famous 18-1 upset 4 years earlier. The stakes couldn't be any higher. Then there was Cruz, in the middle of it all, scoring a touchdown on the grandest stage in all of American sports. The Giants won and Cruz finished with 4 receptions for 25 yards. Although his impact wasn't eye-popping on his stat sheet, Cruz was game planned against heavily by Bill Belichick and the Patriots defense. The Giants did the impossible, again winning 21-17. Eli Manning hoisted his second Lombardi trophy, and an undrafted player from Patterson, New Jersey, a kid who had been sent home from his college twice, was now a world champion. The improbability of all of it was probably too much to process. In the seasons that followed, Cruz cemented himself as one of the NFL's elite slot receivers. From 2011 to 2013, he recorded 3 consecutive dominant seasons, caught seemingly everything Eli Manning threw his way, and became the face of New York football alongside his quarterback. He signed a massive contract extension, validation in dollar form of everything he had overcome to get there. But football can be cruel in ways that have nothing to do with talent or effort. In October 2014 against the Eagles, Cruz went down with a devastating torn patellar tendon. It was one of the most painful, most debilitating injuries in sports, a structural failure in the knee that takes away everything: speed, cutting ability, confidence. The sight of Cruz writhing on the field at Lincoln Financial Stadium stunned everyone watching, because some part of every fan had quietly started to believe that this particular player was protected somehow from this freak kind of ending, and he was not. What followed was years of grueling rehabilitation, setbacks, and heartbreak. A calf injury, another surgery, another missed season, a cautious return, and another setback. The football world moved on, the way it always does. Through it all, Cruz refused to announce a quiet retirement. He kept working, he kept rehabbing, he kept showing up. Hashtag the comeback. And in 2016, nearly 2 full years after the injury, he walked back onto an NFL field. Week 1, Giants versus the Dallas Cowboys, 4th quarter. Victor Cruz caught a touchdown pass and immediately broke into the salsa dance. The crowd didn't cheer just because of the touchdown or his stats. They cheered because they understood exactly what that moment cost him. It wasn't just a touchdown, it was a man refusing to be fined by his lowest point. Cruz was never quite the same player physically after that patellar tendon injury. The explosiveness, the elusiveness in the open field, that burst that had made him unmatchable at his peak, was pretty much gone. And when the Giants released him in 2017, it marked the end of an era. But his legacy was never in doubt, because Victor Cruz represented something that goes far beyond football statistics. He represented every athlete who was told they weren't good enough, weren't big enough, weren't from the right school or the right town. He represented every undrafted player who ever got one shot and decided to make it count. He represented every kid from a tough city who dared to believe that they belonged on the biggest stage, and then he got there and proved it. For Giants fans, Victor Cruz wasn't just a wide receiver. He was energy, he was swagger, he was hope. And for a few unforgettable seasons, number 80 helped define New York football in a way that no first-round pick, no 5-star recruit, no heavily scouted prospect could have scripted. Undrafted, undeniable, unforgettable. This is the legacy of Victor Cruz. What is going on, you guys? I really hope you enjoyed that video. I was just sitting thinking, because the Giants haven't really had too much success at the wide receiver position outside of guys drafted in the first round in recent years, and even via free agency, guys haven't come in and clicked. And it's been just a revolving door of players that position, and guys, now we're seeing a young guy like Malik Neighbors not being able to stay healthy. But I was just thinking about all of this, and the legend of Victor Cruz popped into my mind, and I wanted to do a video about him because he's one of my all-time favorite Giants for what he brought to the team. And although he wasn't on the team very long, I think his impact was undeniable in terms of the memories that we have with him. He came out of nowhere. I think he wrote a book that was called Out of the Blue. So I haven't read it, but I think maybe that could be something on the summer reading list. But I'll just never forget, especially going into that season when the Eagles had put together that dream team. I actually forgot about it until I started doing this video and looking into the context of that game specifically. And they had signed Amandi Asamoah, who was the veteran free agent that I believe they signed from the Raiders. And that Eagles team had so much hype, and Victor Cruz kind of took it all away with that one game early on in the season. And I'll never forget watching that, because we knew that Victor Cruz had the hype from the preseason the year before, and guys come and go. There's been plenty of guys that have had great preseasons for the Giants, especially at wide receiver, and especially recently too. Like, Alex Backman, Colin Johnson, Corey Washington. If you guys want to really go down a wormhole, I thought Corey Washington was going to be the truth after how good of a preseason season he had that time. But talking about Cruz, it was pretty much in a national spotlight and got blown up a little bit more because his preseason game against the Jets was also on the Hard Knocks version of when the Jets were peaking. They had Sanchez, and the Jets were like on this trajectory upwards. And really going back and forth, battling with the Giants for like supremacy of the city, even though the Giants did have that win over the Patriots in the Super Bowl. And both teams, as I noted in this video, kind of went on different trajectories based off that one catch. So Victor Cruz had a role to play in just New York football in general, and he still does. And I'll always love him for everything that he did with the time for the Giants, and he always seems like a likable and great guy. Let me know what you guys think about Victor Cruz. Did you enjoy this video? Is there anything you wanted to see me do in further detail? Or maybe someone who's next? I just knew that I wanted to do this one because I was just thinking about him and how explosive he was. And more recently, because we haven't really had good wide receivers been able to replicate, especially really anyone undrafted. And I almost wonder now is like, do you only get a undrafted player to have that large of an impact like every 10, 20 years? Did we have Victor Cruz and that's it for us ever? Because when undrafted guys pop up for the Giants now, in my head, I'm always like, who's going to be the next Victor Cruz? Maybe there is only one. Thank you guys for watching.